You know, I mean, Jessica, I am not a dictator. I'm the president.
On Friday, March 1st, President Obama gave a press briefing where he was asked by CNN's Jessica Yellen why he couldn't force the Republicans in Congress to reach a deal to stave off the sequester. The president replied that he's not a dictator, but the president. So ultimately, if Mitch McConnell or John Boehner say we need to go to catch a plane, I can't have Secret Service block the doorway, right? Right. Exactly 40 years after President Richard Nixon lied during a press conference saying, "I am not a crook," President Obama has assured the press, "I am not a dictator." Of course, such famous and well-timed statements aren't sufficient cause to impeach Obama. The repeated lies, the threats, and the gross breaches of constitutional law and due process do provide more than ample grounds for Obama's impeachment. Just prior to his Nixon gaffe, Obama came under scrutiny from none other than Bob Woodward, the Washington Post editor of Watergate fame. During the course of the 2012 election campaign, also the lead-up to the fiscal cliff, and even the day the sequester went into effect, Obama repeatedly lied that the idea for the $85 billion in automatic spending cuts across both the defense and non-defense budget was a Republican's. As Woodward demonstrates in his most recent book, the sequester originated inside the Obama White House.
So every time that we get a piece of economic news over the next month, next 2 months, next 6 months, as long as the sequester is in place, we'll know that that economic news could have been better if Congress had not failed to act. And let's be clear, none of this is necessary. It's happening because a choice that Republicans in Congress have made.
The Obama administration did not take kindly to Woodward's fact-finding, and in a February 27th interview with Politico, Woodward revealed that an Obama aide, Gene Sperling, got him on the phone and yelled at him for about a half hour for publishing facts the White House did not want published. In a follow-up email, Sperling threatened the reporter, saying, "I think you will regret staking out that claim." After Woodward went public with the White House's not-so-veiled threats, a number of other reporters spoke up as well. Lanny Davis of the Washington Times reported he was told he would lose his press credentials if he continued publishing articles against the Obama White House. And Ron Fournier of the National Journal ran up against badgering, vulgarity, abusive language, and similar threats to those Woodward received. On the day of the sequester, Washington Post columnist Kathleen Parker reported, "The Obama administration has demonstrated its intolerance for dissent and its contempt for any who stray from the White House script. Yes, all administrations are sensitive to criticism, and all push back when such criticism is deemed unfair or inaccurate. But no president since Richard Nixon has demonstrated such overt contempt." The Obama White House embodies something far worse than a Nixon problem. Lyndon LaRouche identified as early as April 11, 2009, that Obama suffers from the same flawed personality as the Roman Emperor Nero. It was for this characteristic that Obama was chosen to become president. He's essentially a psychotic, and he's controlled by his psychosis, which in turn is manipulated by his controllers, and ultimately the true policymakers of the United States. He's kept an exclusive, intimate clique of advisors, cabinet appointees, and other officials to feed his psychological need for praise and veneration. Some will finish his sentences for him. Anyone who threatens the president's ego, anyone who frustrates or calls into question the sources of his self-adulation, are duly targeted, threatened, and eliminated.
The situation we face in the United States and worldwide is comparable in many respects to Rome under the dictatorship of the Emperor Nero. The character of the president under these conditions is of that form. He will eliminate, as Nero did, all his own advisors from outside that particular team. And his self-adulation, his manic, euphoric self-adulation, this is the mentality of the worst kind of dictator.
The first 2 years of the Obama foreign policy under Secretary of State Hillary Clinton were distinctly different and ultimately more in line with American foreign interests than the policy direction of the last 2 years of the administration. Somewhere in between, there was a stark break from Hillary Clinton's initial position, typified by open and productive talks with her Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, and her outgoing position, typified by the murder of the captive Muammar Gaddafi, the alignment with al-Qaeda forces in Libya and in Syria, and her final act as Secretary of State, defending the Obama White House's virtual treason of September 11th, 2012.
The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again.
I would conclude that she was terrified, because such a sudden change in behavior on her part, considering that her husband had been a 2-term president of the United States, that this man would dare to attempt to intimidate her, and he did intimidate her. There's no question of that. And she caved in. And her husband, the former president, caved in massively, which means that there was something very ugly, very, very, very ugly about the presidency of Obama after the midterm of his first term.
Based on available evidence, including the visible changes in the State Department over 4 years, it would certainly appear that Hillary was threatened by Obama. Based on now documented accounts from journalists, members of the press have been threatened by the Obama team. And until very recently, the Congress has been silent. Could it be the case that they too were being threatened by Obama? What would it take, or what did it take, to induce leading men and women of the Congress to give up their authority to declare war, as in Libya, or their power of the purse, as in Obama's super Congress, the fiscal cliff, and his sequester? And what did it take to get these legislators to abrogate the power of checks and balances, to disavow their constitutional oversight of executive branch actions, as in Benghazi, or in the conduct of drone warfare and extrajudicial killings? The very day Lyndon LaRouche made the previous statement, the ugliness being veiled by the complacency, fear, and intimidation of those around the White House and in the Congress, was uncovered by a ruling in the second most powerful court in the United States. The D.C. Circuit Court ruling of January 25th concluded that Obama's non-recess appointments to the National Labor Relations Board were a gross overreaching of executive branch power, an act that would eviscerate the Constitution's separation of powers.
But in this case, some authority other than the Congress was required to initiate the action which was required. And what I heard from the reading of the conditions of the charges, of the conclusions of the court, those conclusions were all in correspondence to the requirements. So there was every reason, that reason would demand, that this president should be impeached under those circumstances. The impeachment as a form has not been realized. The impeachment in terms of the indictment has.
The implications of the appellate court ruling have opened the floodgates for the legislative branch to defend the Constitution from a dictatorial power grab, It was only in the week following that ruling when members of both houses of Congress began in earnest to make serious demands of the White House. There's an ongoing series of bipartisan demands for more information on the incident in Benghazi. There are demands for full disclosure of the legal opinions employed to justify the use of drones in foreign countries and lethal force against American citizens. There are demands for a repeal of the 2001 authorization for use of military force, as well as ongoing threats to hold up Obama's nomination of John Brennan to the CIA. Those demands have been met with icy silence from the White House and an outright refusal to cooperate. Their first week back in session, members of the House Judiciary Committee were frustrated when they were denied access to the Obama drone memos. Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte, Republican from Virginia, noted at the outset of a February 27th Judiciary Committee hearing that the Department of Justice refused to provide the memos requested by the committee, and Attorney General Eric Holder had refused the request to testify at the hearing. Ranking Member John Conyers, Democrat from Michigan, stated at the same hearing, "All we are seeking is information to which we are duly entitled. I don't think that the Attorney General of the United States can decline to come before this committee on a subject that is so clearly in our jurisdiction." Conyers went on to discuss White House policy, saying, "I'm not convinced by the administration's legal rationale for the targeted killing of any United States citizen overseas. I also remain unconvinced about the targeted killing of terrorist suspects who are non-citizens. Although the administration appears to rest its claim of authority on the authorization for use of military force passed by the Congress in 2001, it is not clear that Congress intended to sanction lethal force against a loosely defined enemy in an indefinite conflict with no borders or discernible end date." When a regime or an administration like the Obama administration is threatened with having an utterly indefensible policy exposed, their only remaining option is denial. Not only do they deny that what they are doing is wrong, but they will deny that they are in fact doing anything that needs to be acknowledged.
Okay, and a U.S. drone strike killed 8 Germans in Pakistan today. Do you have any information about that?
I don't, and if I did, I wouldn't get into it. No, no.
Take the case of former Press Secretary Robert Gibbs, who announced to MSNBC on February 24th that he was given direct orders by the Obama administration to deny the existence of the drone program when it came up in press briefings. Gibbs said, "When I went through the process of becoming press secretary, one of the first things they told me was, you're not even to acknowledge the drone program. You're not even to discuss that it exists." Gibbs continued, "Here's what's inherently crazy about that proposition. You're being asked a question based on reporting of a program that exists. So you're the official government spokesperson acting as if the entire program is pay no attention to the man behind the curtain." As Lyndon LaRouche said last Friday, all is not well in the enemy camp. Barack Obama is cracking up. His lying is obscene. And lying his way out of the problem is becoming harder and harder for him. Obama is restraining key administration officials from appearing before Congress. He is refusing to produce critical information the elected representatives of the people of the United States are entitled to see. He is threatening members of the free press, and likely, he's threatening elected members of the government. And he has been caught.
Now, if you are an effective dictator, you don't lie. You don't talk if instead of lying. You be enigmatic. This guy is trying to use influence on the people he intends to eat. He lies to people and gets caught at it. That's not a smart dictator. That's not a smart opponent. This man is a failure.
Obama has been caught lying, and that puts him in a very vulnerable position, a very ripe position for imminent prosecution under the actual definition of imminent and under actual American law.